Last night at dinner, I was telling some friends who were staying with here what I would ask if I got up here. And my wife overhears the conversation, and she says, and I'm like, it would be so joyous to be up here and asking these questions. And she said, you're not going to go up there. There's people that have been pre-paving this and doing the work of getting up here, imagining this in their head. And I'm like, and as soon as she said it, we made eye contact, and she knew that she was saying that work was going to trump joy, and we both knew I was going to be up here. So I did it. I did it again. I manifested something good. So anyway.
That was powerful pre-paving. When you pre-pave in alignment with who you are, look how fast it comes about.
Amen to that.
Yeah.
So I don't know if this is going to be the finale, but regardless.
Likely.
So I just want to say a prayer, like, let me ask questions that touch everyone in this room.
Yeah.
That creates a jumping off point, so the next time you're in Asheville, instead of saying, you silly humans, you're still not getting it, let
we
us
would
all
never say that.
Oh my gosh, what a great jumping off point. You guys have really come a long way. You're finally getting this.
What we want to say is, you will never stop being at a jumping off place, and that's the way you like it.
All right, okay.
We're never going to be to the final place. We want to hear your questions. You give us a question, we'll give you an answer. Let's see how many questions and answers we can do in 11 minutes.
Cool, let's do it. Okay, so it was once described to me that along this path, we are not doing, we're just living like normal humans, and then we learn about the law of attraction. And as we learn about the law of attraction, and
we would say instead of that during all of that time that you're living life, you're learning about law of attraction. And so your life experience is teaching you about it. And then when someone points it out in a very concise way, you feel the resonance of what you've already taught yourself. And then you go through a portal where things shift. It's like moving into the next vehicle. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so as we get really good at it, and our belief in the law of attraction turns into knowing.
And how do you feel while that's happening? How do you feel as you're getting really good at it?
Good.
Yeah, you feel good. Are you basing it on how you feel or the results you're getting, or both?
Both.
Excellent. What now?
Okay, so we are learning this, and we're getting good at it. We see that the totality of everybody and everything, and how it's feeding in, and how we're kind of, it creates that oneness feeling.
And thank you everyone for all of it. You want to
yes.
feel, you feel.
Yeah, thank you. So, but it was described to me one time that once you get really good at that and your ego dissolves, and
your ego doesn't dissolve, because your ego is how you focus.
Okay.
But that negative ego that is in competition ceases to exist, while your super ego, which we would call your inner being, is dominant. Super sense of self. Call it anything you want. Ego is a pretty good word.
Okay.
Ego has negative connotations because most people approach life from a sort of combative point of view. Yes, we interrupted you, but we just wanted to make that clarification. So where were you going?
Okay, so where I'm going is we're asking and we're receiving and we're listening to this inner voice, and it was described to me that at some point you'll stop asking for yourself and you'll start asking, how can I serve God? And that's never really sat well with me, because I feel like this asking, like, why would Abraham teach me to listen to myself all the time? And then all of a sudden I get really good at it, and now I have to listen to this God thing that's outside of me. Isn't that God thing the thing that's been talking to me the whole time? So there's never ever a sense that I have to do the work for God. As long as I'm listening, then I'm doing that,
and
right?
in the moment you try to do that, you separate yourself from the very thing you've been trying to find all along. That's why we've been teasing you a little bit, saying that humans have servicitis, servituditis. And by that, what we mean is you sort of are missing the point. You are God. You are.
I love it.
You are.
I love it. Cool.
And someone who was a very good ambassador from your point of view of God, which is Jesus, understood that if you sat before him dripping your illness, he didn't see your illness. Instead, he knew your wellness. He saw you in your God form, not in your human form where you were slightly disconnected from it. And so when you're tuned into that, that is when you do your greatest service. We're not trying to talk you out of service. It feels wonderful to be of value to others. We just want you to plug your vacuum in before you try to vacuum the floor. If you're not plugged in to the source energy, then you have nothing to give. So you can't serve without knowing who you are.
My next question is about time. I feel like you have never negated the fact that we're experiencing time in a linear way.
Oh, you are in a time-space reality because it helps you to focus. And most important, because in your awareness of your time and space, you can feel the satisfaction of your motion forward. Without that perspective, it would not be as rich.
Okay, so those things happen, and I can change my perception of it. So something may happen, instead of getting preoccupied with this thing in the past, I shoot off my rocket of desire, and my experience of that thing in the past can change.
It does.
Right? Right, so that's what I've...
Because wherever you're looking, your perception is dominant. And so if you are in alignment and you are looking into a past experience, your perception sees it through the lens of source. We've teased with you a little bit and said, and so in your connected now, you change your past. Today, we've taken an even more evolved for your advantage stance, in that we say to you, the difference between humans and their inner being is that your inner being doesn't look back. Your inner being is always looking forward. But humans who can't help but look back, we're just asking you, since you're going to look back, you're probably going to look back from your now perspective of connection. Don't look back from your place of not liking where you are and trying to justify or explain why you got in this place you don't want to be. That's not productive at all. That holds you where you don't want to be.
Okay, so I was told a story about time, and I'm trying to figure out if this works in the way that it was described. Okay, so real quickly, the story is somebody was skiing down a hill in some mountain, and they were by themselves and they were off on their own. They shouldn't have been there alone. They hurt their leg, and they're sitting there and they're like, oh my God, I'm in so much pain. I'm not gonna be able to get down the mountain. I'm gonna die up here or something. So they look over across the way, and 100 yards away, there's like this little shed. So they crawl over there and they get into the shed, and they're sitting in the shed and they're praying, like, God, let me out of this situation, like, give me help, whatever. He opens his eyes and he sees this box, right? And in this box is like some sort of prosthetic limb or some contraption that gets him down the mountain. And it's in the paper the next day or something, and some guy comes forward and he says, I was the guy that a year ago was tasked with cleaning out that shed, and I picked up that box. That was the last thing I had to pull out, and I got this overwhelming feeling, don't take the box. And so I put the box down, and here it came around, and it saved this guy's life or something. So my question is, if we are in this time-space reality, can I pray now for something to change, for my experience of something to change, this rocket of desire,
yes,
and have an effect on someone in the past?
Yes. Let us explain it to you in a easier way to get your thoughts around. So if you start with the premise that every thought that's ever been thought still exists, and you realize that even before you got here into this body, you were launching rockets of desires. In other words, you were pre-paving even before you got here and knowing about your well-being. What this conversation is taking us to is a conversation that we had earlier about the immense number of intentions and beliefs and desires that this atmosphere is rich with. It's what we mean when we say to Esther, it's child's play. In other words, that story that you described is child's play in relationship to the things that are possible, because in your desire for well-being, you've put things into the vortex that are underway, and their ability to be translated into realness is only about your ability to perceive them. Because you're slow at doing that, you have a distorted view of reality. You think things have to go really, really slow because as a human race, things have been going really, really slow for one reason and one reason only. You are enamored with what is, so you give most of your attention to what is. So what is just keeps being what is. Different faces, different places, but same experiences over and over and over again. When you catch a whiff of the universe's ability to take your thoughts can instantaneously be transformed into things. It isn't only that someone from the past put it there and you got a thought and another thought and another thought that led you there. There's a lot of that goes on. It is that things can shift in the moment based upon your ability to believe what you are desiring. One day, Jerry and someone handed them a book, and the book was written by someone who was talking about abundance. And there was an analogy given that once you really get into the vibe of abundance, that it'll start demonstrating to you in lots of ways. And so in this description, pennies would start showing up everywhere. And Jerry and Esther read it, and they were not resistant to the idea of it, but it didn't feel very important to them. They felt in a sort of snobbery sort of way, that they were way past that way of understanding creation. They weren't looking to create pennies, but the story captivated their interest just the same. And then the number of pennies that started showing up in their experience became ridiculous. It was like a raining of pennies around them. They were finding 20 and 30 pennies a day in places where they shouldn't have been, where they had never been before. Esther was actually thinking for a while that Jerry was playing tricks on her, and he was thinking the same of her. In other words, so many weird things with the pennies, because they'd activated in their vibration, and the universe was demonstrating that anything that's active in your vibration can come into your reality if you are amenable to allowing it to be. Well, they're amenable to allowing the universe to create in their experience in any way that they're giving their thoughts, provided it's something wanted. And so they were wide open vessels for the universe to play with joyfully in that way. So this went on for several days, and they're getting on an airplane, and they got onto the airplane, and they're sitting in the bulkhead. They're buckled in. Everything that they own is up overhead because they are on the bulkhead, and they're sitting there. And as the plane is lifting into the air, Esther looked down and she said to Jerry, "You've got to see this. 2 pennies were standing on their edges." Nothing happens outside the physics characteristics of where you are, because there are laws that rule all things, but there are possibilities within those laws that humans do not allow. So the inertia of the plane, the vibration of the plane in that moment, the weight of the pennies in that moment, and the intentionality of Jerry and Esther to see remarkable things with pennies, they were no longer blah, 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 ho hum about pennies. These pennies had demonstrated something that they thought to be before then an impossible feat. Esther said, "I'm so glad we were together, because no one would have believed me." And Jerry said, "No one but me will ever believe you anyway." And Esther said, "Well, it's enough that you were here." All things are possible. If this time-space reality has the wherewithal to inspire within you a desire, if the desire can be born out of this, then the full manifestation of the desire can be born out of this also. If you can dream it, it has to be a reality. So you've brought us around to our favorite subject, which is the reason that you all are in your physical bodies anyway. And that's the turning thoughts to things. It's the comprehending the vibrational nature of this universe and molding or modifying my thinking to a place of expectation, so that I can allow the thoughts of my desires to become bigger, more momentum, more pleasing, more momentum, bigger, more momentum, more pleasing, more momentum, until those vibrations become thoughts, and those thoughts become impulses, and those impulses become rendezvous with pennies or whatever, and those rendezvous support more knowing, and that more knowing supports more asking, and that asking brings more answering, and that answering brings more reveling, until finally you are in your physical bodies being who you were born to be, the creator of your reality, not sticking your nose in anyone else's, but letting life come to you and letting those decisions be born in you, and honing your egotistical point of self into a place where you allow the fullness of who you are to demonstrate in this time and space things that have never been demonstrated in this time and space before. And don't you know that that's happening all day, every day? We want you to focus not upon the creations. We want you to focus upon the creating. We want you to focus not upon where you're going. We want you to focus upon how fun it is on your way along that journey. We want you to feel the vibrational essence of your unfolding, not jump so far into the need for the manifestation that you miss the parts that are just as delicious, the parts that are delicious. The vibration is delicious if you can sense it. The impulse is delicious if you can feel it. The idea is wonderful if you can comprehend it and acknowledge it. The words are special, but so much came before those words could be offered, you see. You think that you didn't pre-pave to be here, but oh, the life that you've been living and what you put in all of our vortex. There was no possible way that we were not going to have this conversation, given who you are and what you want. And it was bigger and further and more satisfying than any conversation that we have ever had. This was new unto the universe.